I'm so excited for this video. I pretty much look forward to doing this video at like the start of the year because I just want to talk about the books that I love here. Last week I did the worst / disappointing books of 2021, but this is the good one, guys. Even though I know a lot of you really enjoyed that video, which I had fun making because I don't really like sit on here and roast books or like complain about books that often. I try to keep it more positive. However, that video, I just got to let that all out. But this one is my top 10 books of 2021. I did narrow it down to 10. I do cheat. I include series. So it's my list though. I'm allowed to do whatever I want with my list. So I did do though like 10. So some of these are standalones, some of these are series. It just depends. I narrowed it down to 10 and I have 4 honorable mentions as well that like just almost missed. Like if I could have done top 14, I would have because I truly wanted to include them. And I sat on this list for like days going back and forth and like switching things around and everything, but I wanted to do 10. I wanted to keep myself to 10, but it's hard when I read like 180 books. Like there's a lot that I love. Also, the sun is now deciding to come out there, so the lighting might get a little weird. Also, this sweater, is it not like the most grandpa-y sweater ever? One of my friends had a birthday party, I don't know, a few weeks back, and it was like an elderly themed birthday party, so I dressed up as a grandpa, so I got this sweater and like a little sweater vest and a hat, and I was Peepaw Earl. It was a look. Top 10, we're gonna go order from 10 to 1. However, every single book that I'm gonna talk about today, I rated 5 stars. I would 10 out of 10 recommend. Love it with my whole heart and soul. These are just the ones, and there's still so many others that I gave 5 stars and that I loved this year. But again, like I wanted to narrow down this list to being 10 books. So that's what we did. It was brutal, but let's jump in. Okay, wow, I see you can already see some spoilers. Let's move those a bit over there. Number 10, we have a series, and that is the Maid Series by Danielle Laurie. It is 3 mafia books. There is a 4th one coming. I don't know if it's coming out in 2022 or if it's 2023 almost, but the first 3 are out. I just fell in love with these this year. I love mafia books, and these were just kind of right up my alley. I know so many of you guys, after I read The Sweetest Oblivion, were like, read the other 2. It took me until I was in the mood, because I won't read it if I'm not in the mood for it. But once I got in the mafia mood and I read these, oh boy, it was over for me. So 3 books, they're companion novels. They all follow different couples within this kind of like world. They're all like interconnected a little bit. So the first one, The Sweetest Oblivion, this one is Nico and Elena, and Nico is a mafia boss and Elena is the daughter of another mafia boss, and he is actually arranged to marry Elena's sister, but they don't really have that connection, that spark that Nico and Elena do. Oh bitch, if you're looking for a man that will literally burn the world down for you, this is it right here. Like I love Nico with such a passion. And so yeah, I don't want to get like too much into spoilery plot for any of these. I've already talked about them a lot, and I know I can ramble quite a bit, so I'm going to try to keep it like a little bit shorter. So anyways, yeah, arranged marriage, but not to each other. Things happen, you know. Then the second is The Mass Obsession. This one follows Christian and Gianna, which you do meet in the first one, because Gianna for a hot second was Nico's stepmother, even though they're like the same exact age, or Gianna's maybe like even a year younger than Nico or something, because it's the mafia, you know, old men marry very young women, and Gianna was married off to Nico's father at one point. Again, things happened that they're not together anymore. Now she meets Christian, who is an FBI agent, but he's a dirty cop, and we love that. He's like in with the mafia, and he's like this cold, brooding Russian Iceman who like she can't get under his, well, she is under his skin, but she's like just tries to always like crack his facade, and they're very much like opposites attract. And so like I said, Gianna is a widow in the mafia. She's obviously not really like looking to get married again after a couple of marriages, but maybe Christian will make her reconsider a little bit. And then The Darkest Temptation, this is book 3. This follows Ronan and Mila, and Ronan is Christian's brother, but rather like Christian was born in Russia and now lives in the States. Ronan was born in Russia and still lives in Russia, and he is a mafia boss over there. And Mila, her father, has missed a couple of life events of hers, and she's kind of like, what's going on? Does he have a secret family over in Russia? She's never been to her birthplace. So she decides to slip her security detail and go get some answers for herself. So she flies up over to Russia on her own, looking out some answers about her family, her mother, her father, just in general. And when she gets over there, things are like weird. People are treating her weird. They're looking at her weird, and she's kind of like, what is going on? And then she crosses paths with Ronan, and he kidnaps her. I love it. I love captive romances. They either work for me or they don't. This one worked 10 out of 10 for me. Out of the three of these, I think my favorite is probably The Darkest Temptation. I just think Ronan and Mila, especially like the grumpy sunshine dynamic of them, it was just perfect. However, I love Nico probably out of the men the most, maybe. But I think the book that like touched me the most was The Maddest Obsession. That's why I couldn't just choose one. I really related to the characters in this one. These three definitely belonged on my top 10, and I cannot wait for the fourth. Next up might be an unexpected book for me. I don't talk about it a lot, but that doesn't mean I don't like love it, obviously, if it's number 9 on this list. And that's The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read this one. This was one of the earlier books that I read this year, maybe back in like January or February, because we read it for my book club that I was a part of that has since disbanded. But this was my best friend Katie's pick for it, and I'm so happy that she picked it because I had seen it online, and I would not have picked this up without the book club because it's a traditionally published book. Yes, it's like old Hollywood, but I didn't really think of it as being like the nitty-gritty indie kind of romances that I love, but I loved it for completely different reasons because it's so vastly different from that. So it was a standout just in terms of something new that I hadn't read in a while, and also just the story. I loved the old Hollywood. I loved the storytelling aspect of it. So this one follows Hollywood icon Evelyn Hugo, who is now like in her 80s, and she's doing a sit-down kind of like expose interview with this one reporter, Monique. And they sit down, so they're talking in like present day. So you're like with Monique learning about Evelyn's life, but then it like jumps to other chapters where then we're like back in the past, like living with Evelyn and going through her life in Hollywood and her 7 different marriages. And really it's all about like who her true love was. Oh, but I don't want to get any spoilers in it. This was just honestly what I needed. It was a great book club pick too. I loved Evelyn's character, and there is like a little connection between Evelyn and Monique that you learn at the end. It's like a little plot twist, and I loved it. I really loved Evelyn because she's a heroine that she is like a very imperfect heroine. She does and says some things that you're like, yikes. But she's just like, she's a flawed person, just like every person in the world. And I really like that because I think a lot of time in fiction, like characters can get written a bit with like rose-colored glasses and people don't want to take them too far. That's why I like dark romances a lot, is because it shows like those nasty sides that people have to themselves. And I don't think that this really hid Evelyn's flaws in any ways. And if anything, it made me love her more as a character. It's definitely not like these other romances on my list, but it's just, I loved it. It was beautiful. Read it. Okay, number 8. I still don't have my physical copy up because one of my friends is reading it right now, and that is Her Soul to Take by Harley LaRue. This book, guys, I loved this. And it's not that I didn't think that I would, it's just that I didn't know how I would feel about it because I had never read anything like it before. So this is a paranormal demon romance between a ghost hunter and a demon. Or well, is she a ghost hunter? She's a vlogger, so I guess kind of like a demon hunter. She tries to catch like supernatural things on camera, and then she accidentally ends up summoning a demon. And they fall in love. Ray is a new college student. She moves back to her hometown that she like grew up in to go to college there, but her parents are like, we are literally not going back there. So they move somewhere else. So she moves back all by herself, and she moves into this kind of creepy house in the middle of the woods, and it's kind of like, Ray, what are you doing? But also, you do you. She has a cute little kitty. Also, there's no harm to the kitty, just so you know. Kitty makes it through unscathed. But anyways, she starts going to college, and immediately some things are not okay. There's just a murder recently on the campus, and there's like kind of rumors of like secret societies and sacrifice scenes and just some things that are not your typical town kind of activities. And there's also the security guard on campus that she is like, what's the deal with you? And it turns out that he's a demon. And then she accidentally ends up summoning him. Cute. Again, I don't want to get too much into like plot points for this, but I will just say it definitely is on like the darker side of things. Has like a really spooky atmosphere, not like scary, because like trust me, I can't do scary, but more just like it really gives all the like Halloween, gray, musty kind of vibes. Like musty sounds bad, but do you know what I mean? Like the gloomy. It's a very like atmospheric book. And I loved it. It was something so different. The spice was great. The romance between Ray and Leon, I loved. I loved both of their characters. I loved the plot. It was like equally plot driven as it was romance driven, which I really enjoyed because I need the balance of both of those. And it set up the characters for the next book really well. I actually have the second book. I just haven't really been like in the mood for it again because I know it just like is such like an atmospheric book, but I'm very excited to get to it in 2022. And I love this, hence why I loaned it out to one of my friends, even though I was like, please be careful with it because I love it so much. Next, I still only have the first book. I'm gonna buy the second and obviously the third book when it comes out, but I'm more just like, I've been trying to be a little more conscious when I'm buying books. So I just haven't bought the second one yet, but I will buy it at some point soon. And that is the Twisted series by Anna Huang. So far it consists of 2 books, Twisted Love and Twisted Games is book 2, and Twisted Hate comes out in January. So excited. I love these. They're new adult romances. So this first one, Twisted Love, is a brother's best friend, grumpy sunshine, a little bit of forced proximity in there, just deliciousness. So it follows Ava and Alex, and Ava is a college student. She's a photography student, and her brother is going away overseas to work. And he asks his best friend Alex if he wouldn't mind, you know, moving into his home and just kind of watching over Ava. So they are neighbors. And he just kind of wants him to watch out for her a bit, just make sure that she's doing okay, that she's safe, you know, whatever. And Alex does not want to. He's not one of those guys that when he was asked, he was like, yeah, sure, I'll watch her. Like, I don't want to, but I'll do it. But like secretly is like, yeah, but I want to like get with her. He's like not like that. He really just is not interested in her romantically like that whatsoever. He kind of finds her like a little ridiculous a little bit, which is like just cute. I love Alex. He's such a brooding Iceman. I've talked about this book a lot. Things uncovered in Ava's past that's interesting. Alex is also like a CEO billionaire, and he is definitely touch her and I'll kill you kind of vibes, which I love in my literary men. And the brother's best friend trope never fails me. It never really does. So that's Twisted Love. And then Twisted Games, which is book 2. This one is a royalty romance. So this one follows Bridget and Reese, and Bridget and Ava are best friends. So you're already kind of introduced to her in the first book, and the companion novels all center around this group of 4 girlfriends. So Ava's book is book 1, Bridget is 2, and then Jules and Stella are the next 2 books. Bridget is second in line to the throne of Eldora. Her older brother is going to become king. She's living in the US, living her best life, going into school, but her bodyguard ends up going back to their country because his wife is like having a baby or something. So he's going on paternity leave and he needs to find a replacement, so he hires Reese. And immediately when he shows up, Bridget and Reese just have different ways of going about their lives. And Reese is a no-nonsense kind of dude. Big, broody, bodyguard, hot, sexy. That got off track. And anyways, he and Bridget just kind of butt heads right away because Bridget has more of like a lax, she kind of doesn't take her security too seriously, and Reese obviously does. But her brother ends up abdicating the throne and she has to go back to Eldora and is basically thrust into being a royal because she was kind of able to live in the US with like a bit of anonymity and not really have to worry about being in a prominent royal position, where now she's literally going to be queen. And it's her and Reese's romance. It's so hot, so fun. And Bridget and Reese's connection was off the charts. It was very much Princess Diaries 2 with the whole like their relationship of being like what's acceptable if you're like a royal. Hot, loved it, can't wait for Twisted Hate. Number 6 on my list is Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. August West. I just think about him sometimes. And I just like to think about him. Just have him in my mind. Just like a comforting little presence. Oh, I love him. So anyways, this is a sports romance, friends to lovers, and like a little bit of love triangle-y, but not like that love triangle-y, because you know who like Iris is supposed to be with. So this follows August and Iris, and August is an NBA player, and one night he's out at a bar watching a game, and he immediately hits it off with a girl there who's also watching a basketball game, Iris, and they just have like this easy flowing banter and kind of instant connection. But then at the end of the night, he finds out that Iris is dating someone, so he's like, okay, cool, you know, like we'll go our separate ways. Like we had a great night together, but you know, go our separate ways, whatever. No cheating or anything, it was just like them hanging out in the bar. And the next night, August is playing in like a playoffs game or something, like a pretty important game, and he runs into Iris there, and he's like, Iris, what are you doing here? It turns out she is dating his longtime like childhood basketball rival to like adulthood, Caleb. He hates him. We hate him. This is like a Caleb hate page, but I think it is for any person who reads this book. So immediately, you know, there's that barrier of her being in a relationship and unavailable, in August, you know, being like, okay, cool, like we'll back off. So they kind of like cool things off. However, then we really follow Iris's journey. I don't want to get too spoilery in this, but also I will say definitely look up triggers for this one if you have any triggers for like domestic violence of any sort. Iris is not in a great situation, and it's really about her like pulling herself out of that situation, and it just made me so angry reading it. It made me so sad reading it. It made me like, it literally made my heart race at times. Like it was hard to read at times, but you can't help but just sit there and feel like right alongside Iris and feeling like trapped, but then also just like that urge for her to escape and just that want for her. Oh, it's so freaking good. So yes, it is a sports romance, but I definitely I wouldn't say that that's like the end all be all of it, because it's so much more than just a basketball romance. And I loved August and Iris's connection, but truly, like as much as I love August, like I want an August West, Iris is like the star of this book, and oh, it's just so good. It's definitely like, it's a very moving book. Like you won't forget about this book once you finish reading it. Like some of the other books that I have on this list are like a little more digestible. This is harder to digest, but it hits you, it touches you, and it's so freaking good. Incredible, and it totally deserved to be on this list because I literally haven't stopped thinking about it since I read it back in February. Next up, we got a doozy. We got another series, and number 5 is going to The Kimora Chronicles by Cora Riley. Oh, my babies. I just want to sit here like this with them. But these first 4 in particular are by far my favorites. These 4 all got 5 stars, and this one got 4, and this one got like 3.5. But overall, the series, I'd give it a 5. Okay, so it is a 6-book mafia series following 5 different couples. One couple gets 2 books. And they are companion novels. They all follow the Las Vegas Kimora Mafia. So they are interconnected with the Born in Blood Chronicles by Cora Riley. So that is like the beginning of the series. I have a full guide to Cora Riley video on my channel already, like explaining like the reading order and how these all are interconnected. So you can definitely go check that out if you're planning on diving in and you want to figure out the reading order between the Born in Blood Chronicles and the Kimora Chronicles. I tried to break it down to make it as simplistic as possible, and then also on my Instagram I did make like a graphic of like the reading order as well, so you can definitely go and check that out. I always link my Instagram down below. So yeah, that's in my highlights on there. So this series, bitch, I loved the Born in Blood Chronicles, but I am obsessed with the Kimora Chronicles. So Twisted Loyalty is the first book. This one follows Fabiano and Leona. Fabiano is the younger brother of 3 of the heroines in the Born in Blood Chronicles. He's their younger brother, so he's originally from the Chicago Mafia. Things happen in that series where then he flees to Las Vegas, and then he kind of gets pulled in to be the enforcer of the Kimora Chronicles by the Falcone brothers, which the other books all follow the Falcone brothers, and he's like kind of an honorary brother. And Leona is actually not in the Mafia, which is why I specifically love this one out of them all, because it's so different to me to have a character not in the Mafia marry into the Mafia, because it feels like they're all always involved, but she's not. So that was just something really cool and different. I loved this one, so good. Twisted Emotions, book 2, Nino and Chiara. So Nino is like the second in command to Remo, his older brother, and so Nino is like would he be like a sociopath or a psychopath? I forget. He literally does not feel emotions. Like, he doesn't, and you figure out why. Like, him and his brothers have some things in the past that happened to them of why they all are a little unwell. He is in an arranged marriage with Kiara, who is a member of the New York Mafia, which again is like the Born in Blood Chronicles. You meet all the New York Mafia. So Kiara is the capo Luca of that series. She's his cousin, but she comes from like a pretty disgraced family because her father was a traitor and her aunt and uncle are literal garbage. And they're like, yeah, you know, just take our niece, even though the Camorra has a very bad reputation. But I mean, obviously we get to know them in here and we know that they are all touch her and I'll kill you for their women. She gets arranged over there. However, she has a lot of trauma on her back. Again, chick triggers. So that's what makes her very hesitant about entering this marriage with Nino and her. But of course, she works her way into his heart. So good. Loved that. Twisted Pride, probably one of my favorites. I'd say maybe this and Twisted Loyalties are tied. Twisted Pride is book 3. This is Remo and Serafina. So Remo is the capo and is like kind of a little crazy. He's like a little crazy, but I love that. And he decides to kidnap Serafina, who is like the mafia princess for the Chicago Mafia. Again, you meet them in the Born in Blood Chronicles. She's also the capo Dante's niece. So this is like a personal attack when he kidnaps her on her way to her wedding, and he kidnaps her and they fall in love. Love it. Twisted Bonds is Nino and Kiara's second book, which they definitely needed. They needed more time to like explore their relationship. I can't really say too much because it would be way too much like plot stuff, but yeah, they definitely need more time with their relationship, and just another great book for them. Twisted Hearts, this is Savio and Gemma's story. So Savio is the third brother in line in the Falcone family, and Gemma, it's like a best friend's little sister kind of romance. Gemma is in the mafia, her family is, but they're like very low ranking. But you know, they fall in love anyways because Savio is like a little piece of shit. But like, I kind of love Savio. I know a lot of people don't, but I don't know. He's kind of endearing. And then Twisted Cravings, this one follows Adamo and is it Dinara? Dinara, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but she is from the Russian mafia, and Adamo is the baby brother of the Falcones. This one was a little disappointing. I think it had more potential. I don't really want to say more. It's more like focused on like the racing, like the illegal street racing and stuff, like the circuits. I don't know. It was fine. It was just disappointing because I did really love Adamo and I don't think he got what I wanted out of him. Anyways, I love these books. My favorite mafia series of all time. And yeah, of course, had to include them. Y'all knew I was going to include this, The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This book was unexpected to me in the best ways because it's one, a traditionally published, which I don't read a lot of, and two, it's a Raylo fan fiction. She's playing with one of her toys, so if it's making like a scraping noise, it's like a little plastic, almost like slinky thing. So she might be making noise back there and I'm so sorry. But anyways, this is a Raylo fan fiction. I love Star Wars with my whole heart and soul, and I love Raylo. I was a Raylo shipper and I am still angry about things. But anyways, this one follows Olive, who is a PhD student. I don't know what year a third year PhD candidate. She went on a couple of dates with this one guy. They didn't really hit it off. And now her best friend is kind of interested in him, but she like doesn't believe that Olive is fine with her dating him. So she makes up this lie. She says that she's actually dating someone. She's not. One night she runs into her friend and she needs to like quick come up with something because she was supposed to be out on a date. So she kisses the first guy that she sees in the hallway, and that happens to be Professor Adam Carlson. And Professor Adam Carlson is he doctor? Oh yeah, he'd be Dr. Adam Carlson, right? And you know, he doesn't hate the interaction. But anyways, so they begin fake dating. They're both getting something out of the arrangement. We just don't really know what Adam's getting out of it. We know what Olive is, but we're kind of like, what are his motives? You find that out towards the end, but it's just, I love fake dating. It's kind of student teachery. Even though she is not his actual student, they're still like in the same department and stuff, and they still see each other on campus. Very like friends to lovers, grumpy sunshine-ish. I love this. I thought it was so good, so surprising. I loved the academic setting. I've never really read a book like that before, and I didn't know if I would like it because I was never good in school and I never liked school, but this was actually great. I loved the science portion of it, actually. I loved how hard Olive worked and like just how smart that her and Adam were, and that they could bond on like an intellectual level as well as like an attractive level and like a personal level. Like they had a lot of depth to them, themselves, and to their relationship. I loved it. I thought it was cute. It was fun. And yeah, again, we're gonna not get too rambly. I loved it. Okay, number 3, a Colleen Hoover book. It Ends With Us. So yes, I did only discover this year, and I'm so happy that I did. This again was an early read in the year for me, and I genuinely haven't stopped thinking about this book still to this day, which again is like what I'm looking for. I want books to stick with me. And this one definitely has. This one follows Lily. She moves to Boston. One night she's up on a roof, and then she runs into Ryle, who is a neurosurgeon, and they kind of like have a little banter back and forth, but he's not looking for a relationship and she's not looking for like a casual situation. So they're like, okay, cool, we'll go our separate ways. And then she ends up running back into him again, and they, you know, start vibing. They start hanging out. They start a little relationship, and she kind of becomes like entangled with his friends and everything. Like she just gets very like immersed in this life in Boston. She opens up a flower shop, and then one night she's out to dinner and she runs into her childhood best friend, neighbor, first love, Atlas. He's working at this restaurant and they run into each other. Oh, it's kind of love triangle-y, but again, I think similar to Long Shot, you're like, you kind of always know who she should be with, but it's a journey to get there. This one is told in past and present. It's told in the present when she's like living in Boston, going about her life, and then also in the past where we've seen what happened with her and Atlas and what led to like their separation and everything. I wasn't prepared for this book. I wasn't, but like in a good way. I wasn't expected to be like hit this hard by a book. I think because I knew nothing going into it. I knew nothing about how things unfolded. So then when a certain chapter happens, I was like so heartbroken, and I felt every single emotion alongside Lily. And I think this is just such a great view into some women's situations. Like I don't think Lily's story, Iris's story are uncommon. So again, definitely look up triggers for this because this does deal with domestic abuse. There's no simple choice when you're in a situation like this, and that's what I think Long Shot and It Ends With Us really explore, that there is just, it's not as simple as some people try to water it down to be. I'm sure you all have heard about it. It's a very talked about book, a very popular book, a very beloved book, and yeah, I just, it's the final countdown. Okay, we're down to our last 2, so we're gonna do number 2, honorable mentions, and then number 1. So number 2 is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. Y'all knew I love the ACOTAR series. It's such a near and dear series to my heart. Totally got me back into reading fantasy and just totally gave me like a new vigor for reading when I first read it. I was obsessed, and I'm still obsessed, and I loved this book. And now to think that we have to wait until 2023 for the next book, I can't. And if it's not an Asriel book, I'm going to lose my marbles. You know what, I should say I'm going to lose the remaining marbles that remain in my head, because I need it to be an Asriel book. I can't say too much about this plot-wise because you do need to read the other 4 books in the series leading up to this. Like this isn't something that you could just pick up, even though it is following a new couple. You still need to read those earlier books. So this one follows Nesta and Cassian, who appear in the first 3 books. And Nesta is Feyre's oldest sister, and Cassian is one of Rhys's, like he's the general of the Illyrians and one of like Rhys's best friends and part of the inner circle. I don't even necessarily want to say anything really about Nesta and Cassian at all, because again, I don't want to give anything away from the earlier books in case you do plan on reading this series. So I'll just leave it at, this is like fantasy, fae, but I'd say if you aren't like the biggest fantasy reader because you like more romance, this is a great series to read because there is heavy doses of romance in it. Like I would say it's equally as romance driven as it is fantasy, and this one is spicy. I don't know, maybe I'd put this at like a 3 spice, maybe like 3.5. It's spicy. The other 2 books have like a couple of scenes in them, but this one is like very frequent. There's a next level with Nesta and Cassian's relationship. It's very like hate to love. Oh no, I was about to say something, but I need to stop talking about it. I don't want to give anything away, but read the ACOTAR series if you haven't already. I love it. Okay, my honorable mentions, I'm not going to go into detail on any of them because again, we don't have time in this video, and I'm going to try to keep this video a little shorter because mine always gets so long. So I'm just going to shout these 4 out that just missed the list. Just missed the final cut. So Waking Olivia by Elizabeth O'Rourke, coach, athlete, college romance, damaged heroine, love. Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, brother's best friend, friends with benefits kind of situation, emotional. Try 6 Venom by Penelope Douglas, bully, high school, sapphic, kind of sports, really, really mean. Like literally hate to love, but I love. And finally, Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, the first book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. Bryce and the Vacuum are Sarah J. Maas's most iconic ship to me, and this was so freaking good, but don't say it's spicy. It's really not. But book 2 better deliver. So I've read so many incredible romances this year, and romance is my all-time favorite genre. I really don't read anything outside of romance. However, when this book came out, I knew I wanted to read it because I had followed the trial, once that victim's impact statement went viral, I learned everything that I could. You couldn't not learn about it, especially if you're around my age. This trial was literally everywhere. I'm gonna struggle with talking about this like I have before, because it just it gives me so many emotions. But that is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. So Chanel Miller is Emily Doe, which if you don't know, you may probably have heard of the Stanford sexual assault case with Brock Turner, where he assaulted a girl behind a dumpster at a party. And Chanel Miller, she chose to go by Emily Doe throughout the trial to try to keep her identity private. A few years went by and she wrote this book to come out and say, I am Emily Doe, this is what happened to me. And I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but this is her telling her story, and it's one of the only nonfiction books that I read this year. I think, again, like I said, if you're around my age, you knew this trial, you knew this case, you followed it, and this isn't, her situation isn't rare. Her being assaulted on a college campus, it's not a rare thing, especially for women to have to imagine. This is her telling her story, so it details the night that she went out, kind of her life before this a little bit, and then what she was planning on doing, and then the night, and that whole process, then the next day, reporting it, starting to go to court. It details every single thing about the process, but then it also talks about how just her life shifted, and how everyone in her life, how their life shifted, and the change in her that she went through, and even going to work and not being able to function, and crying in the stairwell, and how it affected her relationship with her sister who was with her that night at the party. It affected her relationship with her friends, her parents, her boyfriend. Every aspect of her life was shifted and affected because of one fucking dude. I can't. It makes me so angry. And as she wrote, she tied in events that took place in current time, the Me Too movement, the 2016 election, and just how that also fed into how it fed into her story. I think you need to read this book. Out of all the books on the list, obviously I recommend all these books. These are all fun, enjoyable books. Hi, Arya. But this one, I genuinely think, unless if you know that this is a trigger for you, it's so hard to read knowing everything that she went through. But I think that every single woman needs to read this, and more men, honestly, more men need to read it, because I'm tired of y'all. I don't really even know what else to say about this book other than just Chanel Miller's writing in this was beautiful. It was straight to the point, but it was also very elegant. I loved it, and it was just so good. And then also in this book too, it does have her full victim impact statement, which is what went viral when the trial was going on, and that's what originally caught a lot of attention. It first started going on BuzzFeed. So then at the back of the book, it has her full victim impact statement, so you can read that. That makes me so emotional. This whole book does. I can't applaud Chanel Miller enough for writing this book and for telling her story when she didn't need to. She had went through enough, but the fact that she reopened those old wounds to tell this story, it's important. I don't know why I got all emotional talking about that. But yeah, that was my #1 book of the year. It was just, I think this surpasses everything on my bookshelves. This is just, this is the most incredible book that I read this year. Okay, So that's it. That's my top 10 of 2021. I'm really happy with my list. I found a lot of like favorite books this year, which I'm glad for, because at the start of the year I was like, what if I can't find books that top these other books that I read last year? But I really did find so many that I truly loved. So yeah, that's it for today. I still have, a lot more December content coming. And yeah, that's it for today. And I will see ya when I see ya.